And I apologize for that delay because these people have been messaging all day. Oh my god. Anyways, greetings, fellow Splat Pack members. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And you guessed it, we're back and feeling particularly nostalgic, or more accurately, Nickstalgic. So much so, we're looking back to the live-action Nickelodeon movies of our youth. And who knows, maybe a few comebacks and surprises on the way on
Nickelodemonth.
Yes. All right, folks. Tonight we are talking about 2004's Lemony Snickett's A Series of Unfortunate Events. This is a movie that I don't have a ton of nostalgia for, but I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for the books. So, I mean, that's kind of where most of my connection to this thing comes from. I honestly only saw this movie once. I rented it once. I didn't even see it in theaters. It was something about the way that they kind of pimped out Jim Carrey in the ad campaign. They really didn't make Count Olaf look intimidating or scary at all. Like he was just kind of this comic buffoon in the ad campaign for this movie, and that kind of turned me off of it. Because here's the thing, and I remember in the books, Count Olaf was a genuinely intimidating figure. Did he have his funny moments? Yeah, sure, but I mean, at least in the first few books, he was like just genuinely creepy and almost diabolical. And in the trailer, it's just like Jim Carrey, Jim Carrey, Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey. So that's really my main. I don't know, Dragon. This movie. I think this movie held up better than I was expecting it to. And in some ways, I almost think it does certain things a little bit better than the Netflix show. I'll give it that much. Some things are done better than the Netflix show. In particular, Dragon, you're going to hate me when I say this, but honestly, in retrospect, I think I probably prefer Jim Carrey to NPH.
I don't hate you for that.
I mean, NPH is just, I feel like NPH is a little bit too smug in the role and like, yes, look at me, I'm playing a quirky character who can also sing well. Aren't I cool because I'm Neil Patrick Harris? I don't know, there's a little bit of a smug self-satisfaction there with NPH doing Count Olaf. Jim Carrey, I think, he is a cartoon character, to be sure. I think NPH maybe nails a little bit more of the intimidating side of Count Olaf, but I do very much like what Carrey is doing with this role from a comedic point of view, even if it isn't straight from the books. Now, Dragon, I have a very love-hate relationship with Series of Unfortunate Events, the books. It's one of those series of books where I can look back fondly on, but honestly, nowadays, I mean, folks, I got like halfway through the Netflix show before just realizing that, like, in book form or in a really good adapted medium with a compelling Patrick Warburton performance, the fact of the matter is, Dragon, this story is just repetitive as all get out, and that's really what bothers me about it. I mean, every book, at least up until, like, book 9 or 10, is virtually the same thing every single time, and I don't know. It's like, I think that much like the book itself, the adaptations of the book kind of have a little bit of a style over substance problem. And the book itself very much has a style over substance problem. It's very much just Daniel Andler just being, coy with the wordplay. And like I said, Drake, the repetition really is my main reservation with the books looking back on them. That being said, you can never take away the moment where I walked into my local bookstore and Lemony Snickett, a.k.a. Daniel Potter, was there. Or Daniel Porter, I'm sorry.
Daniel Handler.
Jesus Christ, wow. Where am I getting Porter from? I'm sorry. Yeah, Daniel Handler was there playing the accordion, and he got right up in my face with an accordion, and I will never take that away from me. That was an awesome moment. But, Yeah, I don't know, Dragon. That's the thing. It's like this is like it's certainly a good idea for a series of books. It's definitely got a lot of famous iconography. I just think the repetition of this book series, mixed with honestly the fact that this book series, much like Neil Patrick Harris himself, is a little bit smug and self-satisfied in some areas. I'm really throwing shade on NPH tonight.
Yeah, what? I thought you liked them.
Just because I had a chance to see him live doesn't mean I'm a huge fan of him.
I didn't say huge fan, but you liked the guy.
Well, anyways, so what are your thoughts on the books, Dragon? Because like I said, I definitely I didn't even finish the series. I got up until book 9 before I realized like this is just not going anywhere. And I heard that the series ends off on a kind of a mixed note. I've heard mixed things about the last few books. You know, some say the departure was for the better, some say for the worst. I know they got away from the formula in the last few books. I'm honestly not even sure how because like I said, I haven't even watched the Netflix show or anything yet.
Anyway, well, for me, so I believe my introduction to Series of Unfortunate Events, it's kind of twofold. I can't remember which one came first, but let's just say the Series of Unfortunate Events kind of came on my radar, and one, the thing that you and I are very simpatico on.
Scholastic Book Fairs.
Scholastic Book Fair, yes. Scholastic Book. There's the Scholastic Book Fair, but the thing I remember more so, the thing that really got me, like let me put it this way: I've seen it at the Scholastic Book Fair. The thing that really turned me on to it, at least the book specifically, was Linda Ellerby. You remember that at all? Linda.
I mean, I remember Linda Ellerby. I don't remember her specifically plugging these books.
Well, what I'm getting at is here's the thing. So Linda Ellerby, she did this, and I've tried to look for it for years, and I still have not found it. But it's just this little thing. I remember it clear as day when it came on TV. It triggered it elicited emotional response. It's always stuck with me. That was the hook for me with this series. That Linda Ellerby, she did like kind of I want to say she did something kind of reflective of the books, where again she was making all kind of like conspiracy driven, like she tried to get an interview with Lemony Snickett for her show, and basically talked about the series and kind of talked about, I want to say, again, I wish I could verify some of this, but again, it's been many years, folks. I'm kind of clinging on the memory here, where the idea is that I believe she's basically giving you the sell of the book, but basically as if it were basically within the universe of the book, where, okay, it's an actual documentary on what happened to the Baudelaire children. And the thing that always stuck with me, the thing that always fascinated me, the Lemony Snickett of it all, where basically she spots like a coat and hatted figure in the distance who turns on that moment, because I felt so, oh my god, they were capturing like a Bigfoot sighting on TV with this author who's kind of doing this brave thing, talking about this tragic tale. And we got to see some of the illustrations from the covers and everything. Like, it was really that thing hooked me so much. Like, oh my god, this is so fascinating. I got to learn about this guy. So that was really my foray into the books. But if I'm being honest, and this is why I'm probably going to have a lot more nostalgia for this movie, Tiki, is that the advertising for the movie, because of course, especially back then, I was a huge Jim Carrey fan. Still am a Jim Carrey fan, but of course, he was everywhere a lot, years ago.
Of course, he is currently making his probably piece de resistance when it comes to acting with Kinney.
That's what I'm saying. So, the point is, Jim Carrey, again, he's kind of went into hibernation for a while, but he's come back with a bang, folks, and it's awesome. But the point being, so I was, a huge Jim Carrey fan, and of course I saw the advertisements for, as you mentioned, it's very kind of in your face, like Jim Carrey as Count Olaf.
Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey.
Of course, I think the most memorable line from the advertising for me is that I'm going to be the ultimate dad.
yes, I remember that quite well.
Which is such a misdirect when you think about it. That's like they're ending that like, oh boy, the wacky relative.
Right.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, of course, that had my attention as well, and that was kind of like linking the book series, which I had not really. I started getting into it. Basically, I had the bad beginning, and the movie essentially it really kind of lit the fire to read at least the first 3 books, which were going to be adapted. So that was kind of my causal link, and I remember specifically, I bought and collected all the books. My memory drifts off after the initial 5. I remember the ending very well. The ending, basically, they're kind of shipwrecked, and I have watched all the Netflix series, but I'm all caught up on Netflix series. The question is how faithful it remains to the book series. I can't tell you 100% how faithful it remains. So I know how it ends, but I don't know how faithful that was. All I know is Patrick Warburton is the. I don't mean this. I'm not trying to cash it. I'm just saying Patrick Warburton is absolutely the most remarkable element of that Netflix series. He is. the way they tackle Lemony Snickett and the narrative structure in that show. Again, Tiki and I, what Tiki has seen from the first season. I mean, how far did you get? Did you get in the series anyway? Did you ever
Dragon,
get to,
I gotta tell you,
essentially...
that's stupid. That Carmelita Splat is what turned me off, man. As soon as I got to
I
Carmelita
hated her too,
Splat,
but I hated her too.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, Dragon. I couldn't deal with that show anymore after that.
I understand that. I believe me, she was my least favorite part of the whole series. But again, she's kind of intended to be, though. But I hear you. I do. But again, of
One
course,
of
you and
these days, I definitely have to go. It's like what, like 4 seasons, right?
Yeah, 4 seasons, yeah.
Yeah, so one of these days, I'm gonna have to go back and binge the whole thing. I really do, but
actually, wait, no, it's 3 seasons.
3, okay, that makes sense.
I believe it's 3 because it should be like 12 and basically 13 books, I believe, and I believe they just extended the 3rd season. The point being, I'm pretty sure it's 3 seasons, Teak. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, what I'm getting at is you in that show, of course, narratively, there's a huge episode 7 of the first season of that series. Really has a huge like, oh my god moment, like, oh, this show knows exactly what it's doing and it's awesome. And those moments sparse throughout like the best parts of the Netflix series, and basically get kind of a full crux. Okay, here's where the story went, and it wasn't perfect. And I don't want to make this into a full compare and contrast. I'm sure it's going to pop up a little bit here and there, but let's just say the Netflix series, while it did have the author working on it essentially for the duration of the whole thing, so Daniel Handler was more involved in that than he was this.
Not surprised, considering it's adapting everything.
Certainly, and again, like the ending, I think the ending's perfect. Personally, what they do in the Netflix series is a really perfect. The epilogue, especially, but the ending and the epilogue are really great. I'll say that much. They get you into it, I guess. And of course, like the big thing that Netflix show has going for it is the VFD, the big the Volunteer Fire Department mystery of it all. They do a lot of really good stuff with that. I'll give you that much. Which of course you kind of saw the inklings of in the first season. Anywho, so the point being, so the advertising kind of got me to the books, and I guess in terms of the thesis for the movie, probably honestly, it's probably one of Nick's best adaptations. I don't think they did many adaptations. I mean, you have essentially have 2 real adaptations with this and Tintin, really, as far as I can recollect. Unless you can think of anything I'm kind of glossing over right now.
Not off the top of my head, no.
So Angora is more of like kind of a Christopher Robin situation, so I can't really call it an adaptation. It's more of kind of a quasi-sequel sort of thing. So
it is kind of a quasi-sequel, yeah.
The point being, out of the 2 adaptations, Nick's adaptations are pretty solid. In all honesty, I mean, if they did the Spiderwood Chronicles, which I don't know if they did or not.
I'm pretty sure they did, actually.
If they did, I have no idea how that one turned out. But I'll be optimistic. Well, they did fine with the other 2. Maybe the 3rd one. Maybe
I remember seeing Spiderwick. I don't remember liking it at all, and I certainly have no attachment to the books.
Well, then I have no idea how it adapted. Point being, this was a really solid edition, at least for my money, because Tintin might be better, but I thought that this, I feel, does really well working with the story.
I feel like in terms of production design, this really impressed me, and it really holds up, especially for a Nickelodeon movie. I mean, this is genuinely like a huge step up from like the the Good Burgers and the Snow Days of the world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. This here's the big thing you got to keep in mind, especially looking back on this movie, and of course, it's such a weird time we're looking back on it now after the whole series has been adapted in Netflix. And at the very least, and again, the good thing is that you were definitely caught up on what this movie adapts, given you've seen the first season, so we're all good there.
Oh yeah.
So what I'm getting at is working with the story at their disposal, as in they kind of approach this adapting the first 3 books. It is a proper cinematic emphasis on cinematic. I feel it's a proper cinematic telling of the books, kind of what the core of the books are, the tone. It's a little brief, sure. It's probably the biggest complaint you could love against movies. It's a little brief in how they adapt, because basically it's a half an hour per act. You can only do so much there. And they have to make some compromises to make a movie out of it versus kind of a series, which of course is very different. Of course, it's going to be difficult when you're adapting a series of unfortunate events. Little brief, but I feel very... I think it feels very serviceable and consistently solid. There's definitely... Compared to the series, it's more consistently solid. I have a more consistent, cohesive piece than the series, where there are elements of the series that, again, get repetitive or kind of wane on you, like a Carmelita Splats, or for me, Mr. Poe. To me, like before Carmelita came around, Mr. Poe, more so Mr. Poe's family. Mr. Poe's family's terrible in that series.
I do not know what they were thinking with Mr. Poe in that series.
Don't kill the Baudelaires. Don't kill the Baudelaires with fire. Kill the Poe family with fire.
Oh, God. I mean,
Anyway,
Timothy
so
Splat is just such a better Mr. Poe, just
Timothy
all
Spall.
around. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. Timothy Splat, what the hell? Oh, man.
So you got Carmelita Splat. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I was thinking Carmelita Splat. You're right.
Okay, point being, I feel the movie is a very solid adaptation, working with what it has. Okay.
Okay, so folks, the way we're going to break this down is we're going to break it down. What? What am I missing?
Background.
Okay, sorry, dude. I'm sorry. Sometimes we don't do background. Sometimes we do background. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, Dragon. Go ahead.
All right, sorry. Okay. Background on this is interesting here. So again, so in 2000, Nickelodeon acquires the rights to a series of unfortunate events. A lot of big names trying it for the director's chair. Like, believe it or not, this is going to sound so bizarre. You had Terry Gilliam, and you had Roman Polanski.
I could see Gilliam. I definitely can't see Polanski.
I know, right? Just Polanski. Assuming that's true, that's so out of left field. It kind of speaks to the strength of the work. Where again, really odd out there directors want, if they're going to do a kids work, they want to do a really unique kids work like this. Anyway, so they end up
honestly,
selling.
I'm just more surprised. Like, I could see Polanski wanting to do it. I'm more surprised that Nickelodeon would consider him.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, it didn't. So maybe that I wouldn't say like, oh my god, we're kind of honored that Roman Polanski picked us, but we can't possibly approve Polanski. What do you think?
Yeah, right.
Plus, they'd have to shoot it overseas because Polanski can't.
Exactly.
I
yeah,
believe that's still. I'm pretty sure it still stands.
I am pretty sure that's still the case. Yeah.
Anywho, so the point being, they settled on Barry Sonnenfeld, the Addams Family director, and the reason they really settled on Sonnenfeld is by sheer coincidence. Scott Rudin, the producer on Addams Family, was producing this film. So he was kind of like, well, I've worked with this guy
Sonnenfeld
before.
was also Men in Black, right?
Yeah, Sonnenfeld was Men in Black and the Addams Family. Those are his two biggies. And
Sonnenfeld had a pretty good run in the late 90s and early 2000s, man. He really did.
And then he did RV.
Oh, God.
Didn't
he do something recently?
Yeah, he did the series Unfortunate Events, which is what I'm going to get to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, duh, of course. Yeah, he did the other series of Unfortunate Events.
Anyway, so the idea, and this is important getting to what Tiki just kind of brought up there, is that so Barry Sonnenfeld's in the director's chair, and Sonnenfeld was working directly with Daniel Handler originally. So Handler was writing the script, and he kind of went through many drafts of the script, and Sonnenfeld approves Jim Carrey, for basically Jim Carrey was kind of suggested, I believe his people kind of suggested him for the part, he kind of auditioned for, and they approved him. So that's kind of your original core thing. We have the writer, we have the director, and we have Jim Carrey in the work. So 2002 rolls around, and we hit money concerns. A lot of financial concerns, and we're kind of like trying to scale things down. And this leads to basically the financial concerns lead to them kind of co-producing with DreamWorks. Basically, DreamWorks comes in for an assist, essentially, assisting Paramount, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And while all this is going on over time, again, they buy the rights in 2000 as they're getting things off the ground. Sonnenfeld, he drops out for other things. And presumably, the project's kind of taking a different turn, presumably. And Daniel Handler, after writing like 8 drafts, he's replaced by Robert Gordon after 8 drafts. So the idea, so Handler basically, he would give final approval, but he wouldn't be taking on the shape the film kind of took it by the end of things. Basically, the DNA of the work is there, but at the end of the day, certain changes would basically. I imagine the abridgedness of everything would probably be after Handler's gone. Be my 2 cents. So let's see. So importantly, Handler, though, it's kind of telling he didn't take writing credit because of the end result. It's kind of you wonder if. You do wonder if it's because he didn't like the end result, or if it's because he just wasn't in. His reasoning was he didn't get like co-writing credit or anything on this movie because at the end of the day, he wasn't the main writer on the project, despite having done those 8 initial drafts. It's just not my movie anymore. And the version that he wrote was Sonnenfeld in mind. So they're very simpatico. You take Sonnenfeld out of the director's chair, it's not going to jive. So perhaps that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, the director who did step in, Brad Silberling. I don't know if that name resonates with you, my friend, but Brad Silberling, he is the director of Casper the Friendly Ghost, the one you're thinking of, and Land of the Lost.
Oh, no. I have heard Casper. I have not revisited Casper in years and years and years. I remember liking it well enough as a kid. But But yeah, the other one is just very, very bad.
Yeah. So, Tiki, I think you spoke about the production design. They shot practically on the back lots of Paramount as practically as they could. Their only CG shots you might see are like during the car scenes. It's about it. Like they have green screen here and there. Like Rick Honrick built the sets. Colleen Atwood, Tim Burton's girl, she built the costumes. So basically the biggest technical challenge they faced on the movie was Sunny. Sunny, she was the biggest hurdle because you had to put this baby in dangerous situations as well as have this baby with razor sharp teeth biting things, which you could imagine would be difficult. Plus, you have to shoot with twins. It's going to result in there are 4 digital shots of this baby in this movie. You can believe it. They look pretty seamless.
Okay.
So there are no. At the end of the day, there's no sequel, but 13 years later, Sonnenfeld, he kind of gets to do the work that he always wanted to do on it with the Netflix adaptation, which it all worked out at the end of the day for Sonnenfeld, I guess being the operative lesson of things.
All right.
Let's jump right into it.
Okay, Dragon, you're gonna have to like warn me in advance next time we do background because I at this point I really genuinely can't tell when we do background and when we don't. All right, like.
Well, it's not like I told you before we went on.
All right. Well.
Anywho. Right, so the bad beginning.
Yeah, set up the format we're gonna do here.
Right, so folks, the way we're going to break this down is we're going to basically kind of go through the books that are being adapted within the movie. So kind of the bad beginning is very much Act 1, the reptile room being Act 2, and the wide window. But what we're going to do is let's just say there's a switch in how the bad beginning is adapted, where we kind of do that as kind of, let's just call it our quote unquote Act 4, the fourth imaginary book, if you will. We'll call it the Marvelous Marriage, the big climax of things. So that's how we're breaking this down, folks. Just kind of go through the movie, kind of view it through like how it's adapted and how it stands on its feet and such,
Okay.
All right.
So we already talked about a lot of the strengths of the bad beginning portion. Namely, one of the big ones is Mr. Poe. Maybe just because it's like, we're coming out of like the abuse of the terrible one from the Netflix show, but my God, Timothy Spall is he is genuinely what I pictured when I pictured Mr. Poe in the books.
Me too. He's just so much more charismatic.
Can I just put this out there? Like, I really hope to God that nobody is like, oh, they don't like the Mr. Poe in the Netflix show because he's black. It's like, no, folks, it has nothing to do with that. Get the hell out of here with that. It's just the fact that Mr.
It's
Poe
really not.
It's just the fact that Mr. Poe in the Netflix show is a total bumbling fucking moron on every perceivable level, whereas the actual character of Mr. Poe is meant to be like, I would describe him in the books as like amusingly dim-witted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
he's inept, but not to the point of just ridiculous proportions
which is exactly why we don't like him in the Netflix series. Yeah.
I've always had this silly comparison for Mr. Poe because it's so remarkable. Pun intended, I guess. He's like British. Sorry, let me rephrase that. He's like a bumbling Mark Bernardin. It's like, what if you took the eloquent writer from Kevin Smith's podcast, that's Mark Bernardin, you made him just bumbling and just put it like these. He's like a Mark Bernardin as a dumb banker. That's pretty much what Mr. Poe is in the Netflix series.
Oh man. All right, so
anywho, but yes, Timothy Spall.
We already highlighted the production design, which is very on point. What do you think about this? Is something that I feel the movie does really well. It's just kind of unfortunate that the Netflix series did it even better and pretty substantially better. What do you think of Jude Law as Lemony Snickett?
That's the thing. Tiki, as much as great as Patrick Warburton is, again, it's 2 very different versions here, but they're both very awesome. I always loved what we did with Jude Law in this.
I think Jude Law is pretty much perfect. And like Warburton is more essential to the plot. Like they tie his Snickett more into the actual plot of the proceedings, whereas Jude Law is more of just a narrator. But I really like the Jude Law stuff, man. And he really is on point. And I will say that he's probably more what I was picturing Snickett to be, whereas Warburton just kind of makes the role his own.
Okay, I got to talk about some with Snickett here. Okay,
All
so
right.
I meant to get this in with the nostalgia, but I can talk about it here because it's very reliant on Lemony Snickett. You mentioned your accordion story. I have something even better. So, well, not as awesome as you actually were in the same room as the guys. Maybe mine's comparatively not as good, but
The more awesome thing about my story is that I had no idea it was going on until I just randomly passed by my bookstore and saw a sign that said Lemony Snickett tonight, and I was like, "What?" And I walk in, and there he is. It
all
was
right.
just
So
total happenstance. Anyways, go
So
ahead.
the most nostalgic memory, the reason I'm always going to have a soft spot for for a series of unfortunate events, the movie is because of the Jim Carrey role. I bought this movie. I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember the advertising for it. It was like I kind of wanted to, but I didn't end up seeing it in theaters. But I did instead buy the DVD, and it was where early in my love of the DVD bonus feature. And they had commentary tracks. Not only did they have a commentary track by the director, they had a second one. The second one was even better. Second commentary track was essentially it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek commentary track where it's Brad Silberling essentially as kind of a Mr. Poe of directors,
Uh-huh.
and it's just it's the kind of a bumbling director and Lemony Snickett in
Oh,
character.
God. That's
As
great.
the very same Lemony Snickett who's like follow the bowlers, he's basically looking at it as a great tragedy, and he's like seeing like the Hollywood system pervert this great tragedy that he's written about. And the idea is like he's been trapped into doing this commentary with with Brad Silberling, who basically accidentally made a movie practically.
Oh, God.
Tiki, if you could ever buy one DVD just for the commentary track, this is the one because it's just so hysterically funny, and he plays the accordion in it too. I won't tell you when, but he does.
All right, all right. Yeah,
It's
that
so
Daniel
fun.
Handler loves his accordion.
It's so funny. It's the funniest thing. So again, it's
Well, I
like
guess in
basically
this case, it's not Daniel Handler, it's Jude Law, but still, that Lemony Snicket loves his accordion.
regardless. So what I'm saying is, like, you have like that version, which is basically it's kind of a fun tongue-in-cheek version of it's Daniel Handler playing Lemony Snicket. Where here, Jude Law is kind of what my initial hook for the whole thing was, where you had that mysterious kind of chronicler of this adventure going on here with Lemony Snicket. This guy's always in
Mysterious
silhouette.
guy in the coat.
Yeah, guy in the coat. He's in silhouette. He
Like,
just looks
you
really.
love your mysterious men in coats.
Yes, yes. Point being, Jude Law, it's perfect casting. He kind of brings the mystique, brings the heft, and he brings like that great care and compassion within the voice. It's really great. And of course, we have that great misdirect at the start with the littlest elf. Imagine we have like this stop motion anime thing of the littlest elf playing, which by the way is a deep cut reference to one of the books. Here, you know how deep cut a reference is. It's not one of the main books. It's like the little supplementary thing they put out called like the darn it, the supplementary thing like the unauthorized autobiography of Lemony Snicket. It was like one of those things. And
Are you sure about this, Dragon? Because I seem to remember the littlest elf being referenced quite a lot in the books.
really.
Yeah, like honestly, I know for a fact that there was definitely a children's TV show in that style that they it was kind of like a metaphor for their lost innocence, you know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure that was in the book.
Well, I bring it up mainly as obscure because again, it's been a while since I've read. But I heard the director. That's what kind of inspired him to put it in there. So I imagine it would be a deep cut. So you might be right, though. I could be wrong.
Uh-huh.
Regardless, the little self's kind of a fun pull there, and it just has this great, wonderful. I'm like, what movie am I walking into? We just have this stop motion kind of Rankin Bass, just kind of happy go lucky thing going on here, and then just
I would like
everything
to
goes.
think that the music is inspired by the springtime song from Bambi.
Yeah, it is kind of again, it's very Bambi-esque. Because you have
Twittery, la 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 la.
absolutely, it's kind of like Rankin Bass meets the opening of Bambi. Well, it meets that scene in Bambi.
Right, right.
And of course, as everything goes dark, and we just have Lemony Snicket coming on. Says, if you want, if you want to see a movie about the littlest elf, I'd recommend you go to the theater next to you to watch it because this movie, you're basically discouraging people to watch the movie, which again is a perfect note to hit the adaptation with.
That's like a classic trademark of the book, is he's always persuading you to stop reading the book.
So again, proper mystique hit with Lemony Snicket is the style of the book right off the bat with the kind of the beginning of the film here. So the Baudelaires, they were well cast, I feel. I think Violet, especially. I think Violet was the best cast. Emily Browning as Violet was probably the best casting out of the three of them.
I would say I like Emily Browning better than I like the other Violet.
That's fair.
Not to say that she's bad, but I think Emily Browning really captured it.
I feel the other Klaus is basically more accurate to the books. In the Klaus in the Netflix show is more accurate to the books.
He is. He is.
I don't mind this Klaus. This Klaus is fine. I wish they gave him glasses, but he's fine. I like him.
That's the main thing that bothered me even when I saw the trailers, is that Klaus didn't have glasses, and it wouldn't bother me so much if not for the fact that Klaus having glasses is literally a plot point in certain scenarios in the book.
Yeah, if they did that fourth book, they'd be in trouble.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, they gave him glasses, but they have him like only when he reads. Which again, we refer to him reading, but we don't see him reading, especially. So that's.
Oh yeah, that's another thing, right? In the book, they made a big deal out of the reading thing, and they kind of gloss over it here.
I don't mind. Here's the thing: I like stylistically how they do it, though. Like when he thinks, we should go to the bookshelf. That's a really cool visual. If you're not gonna have him be able to read, then we can kind of go to it like that. At least they kind of made the best out of the situation.
Yeah, I will say when you're comparing the Netflix show and this, I think one of the things that really gets the axe in terms of screen time is the theater troupe.
Yes, in this case, yes, you're right. We do a lot with we do a lot and do
I don't
some
necessarily
evolution.
think that's a bad thing though, because I think in the Netflix show, in some instances, they kind of overstay their welcome.
They do. I'll admit that the Hook Handed Man is far more entertaining than the Netflix show. I'll give you that. But that's the thing. Like we're basically using the troop as kind of like just they're the henchmen. That's what we use them for here.
Right, exactly.
The other one, they're colorful henchmen. You know, like they're henchmen, but they get gags.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have fun with them, or we do a little bit more with them. But here they are intimidating. They are like, okay, they're oddballs. Oh my god, they feel like a theater troupe you might find in kind of the lower end of LA.
Oh god.
So let's talk about
let's a very specific pool, Dragon. I like that pool.
Let's talk about Olaf. So Olaf,
Yeah.
the piggyback off what you were saying kind of at the start of things here, the Jim Carrey role. So I agree with you to an extent here's the thing. So Olaf here, he's very theatrical. He's I love how he just kind of plays a benevolent. There's a benevolent cruelty in the dynamic, which is really fun. It's like he's cruel, but he's benevolently cruel. Like he's very theatrically, benevolently cruel. Where he's just like, I am your beloved Count Olaf. It's just like what Jim Carrey brings that Neil Patrick Harris kind of lacks is that. Now I know Neil Patrick Harris brings it on here and there, but it's always like, it's Neil Patrick Harris doing this. No, they're not really in all that.
That's what always bothers me about NPH is that, like, honestly, like Jim Carrey is probably like an even bigger name than NPH is, or at least he was when this movie came out. But with NPH, it's like he's got such a style to him. You know what I mean? Maybe it's the fact that they decided to shoehorn so many songs into the Netflix show. I really think that's one of the things that bothered me about the Netflix show is it's like, all right, I get it. Fucking Neil Patrick Harris is into fucking musicals. I get it. You don't have to have him sing every 20 minutes.
See, I would argue this. The books, here's what Neil Patrick, I don't want to make this full, basically the biggest compare and contrast you're probably going to have with the Netflix show will be on Count Olaf, so I want to try to move past it after this. But here's the thing, in terms of that compare and contrast on that. So, to me, Olaf in the Netflix series, he follows the model of the books in regard to the fact that, Olaf, basically Daniel Hannah likes doing a lot of make Olaf into a buffoon with the dialogue. Basically, the idea is Olaf is menacing as all get out, but he's kind of a buffoon. That's where the comedy gets from. Basically, he doesn't understand. Right. Basically, he's very illiterate. Daniel Hannah has Lemony Snickett has a lot of fun with the illiteracy of Count Olaf in the book. So that's where the comedy comes from there. But mostly menace. He's kind of stupid though. And we do a lot of that comedy with him in the Netflix show. However, there's a lot of like a broad comedy as well with him, where again we do the singing, we do all that sort of stuff. And so basically, we follow the model, and then we go a little bit broad with it because it's Neil Patrick Harris. Here, however, what Jim Carrey's really doing with it, or yes, and again going into the Netflix series for the first time, I was like, oh man, I hope they're going to be a little bit more, kind of dead center, a little bit more serious with things than we had with Jim Carrey. But again, comparatively, Jim Carrey was more menacing than Neil Patrick Harris was.
I think comparatively, yes.
Because that's the thing. Again, Olaf, he's very theatrical. He's very fun, but again, he can turn it up when it comes down to it. He's not as scary as the books for sure, but he has his menacing moments that truly resonate. It's it can be a lot of fun, but he's less of a character, more of an antagonist for this story, if that makes any sense.
I will say that I think Jim Carrey goes there are moments where Jim Carrey is more over the top than Neil Patrick Harris ever is. But I think generally speaking, the baseline for Jim Carrey is more subdued than Neil Patrick Harris, if that makes sense.
It kind of does, and that's the thing. Like, let me get, again, you're not really. I know you're not far into it. Let's just say the Netflix show makes him into a character, and that Olaf does have an arc towards like the third season. There's an arc there, like towards the end of things.
I
You
know
see
that
the
the
arc
character
really
becomes more complex as the books wind down. I know that much.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's like Olaf the character. Where here it's Olaf as an antagonist, which again is fun and that's where Jim Carrey he has like a direct ending for this guy. Okay, basically this guy does not change, but he's a lot of fun. Fun in terms of like playing a villain as well as fun. It's just like again, basically he's kind of playing a fun over the top villain. But again, what he stresses so well here is again he can turn up those. There are those beats that are very faithful to the really intimidating Olaf where he hits Klaus when he
the beat where he hits Klaus is probably the most dramatic part of this whole movie, I would say.
I'm saying like when he hits Klaus, and again like when we get to Act 2 specifically, that's what I'm talking about. Like those are the moments that really oh man, we have the intimidating Olaf in there, and he can really turn up when they call for it. And again, it's kind of more complex where you have. In a sense, Tiki, it's that if the Baudelaires are if we're relating to the Baudelaires and their children in a bad living situation here, again, you have like sometimes you have those parental dynamics where you have those guardian dynamics where you have one that's like he can be really happy-go-lucky one minute, but then really intimidating when you least suspect it,
like
that sort of thing. So again, overall, overall with
we don't get a lot of Justice Strauss at all. We really just kind of set her up.
Fun connect though. Again, we have Catherine O'Hara who appears in both show and
yeah.
But you're right. So I guess overall, like I think we're very faithful in hitting our beats. Like again, we address Justice Strauss and we have the introduction to her, but we don't have like the full story with her like we do in the in the book. Or but we do hit Pasta Puttanesca. We do that like verbatim. That's from the book. We get all that there. But again, overall, we streamlined. Basically, if you're a purist, it's really streamlined if you're a purist. But we do hit the beats. I got to give it points to that. We do address these things. We don't do it fully, but we do hit them.
Dare I say it's adapted in kind of the same way that Watchmen was adapted, where we're doing everything pretty by the book, but it maybe doesn't have the same sort of substance that it has on the printed page.
Yeah.
I know it's a weird comparison between Series of Unfortunate Events and fucking Watchmen, but just bear with me.
Also, we set up in Act 1, we set up some connectivity and some strands very well. Like, we have like the eye, basically we set up the theme of the eyes, the eye tattoo. Again, like don't go up into the tower. We do a lot of great setup in Act 1. Speaking of the actors, we already spoke to them a little bit here, but let's say in terms of the ones we have here, they're basically kind of a losers club of actors. They're basically their gimmicks before their characters. Again, per like Netflix, they're a little bit more characterized here. They're just like it's like, hey, look who the celebrities are. Like we have Luis Guzman as that plays the bald man. We have we have Jane Addams, and here's the thing: I like Jane Addams and Jennifer Coolidge as the white-faced woman. I will fully admit, though, when you think of them from the books, you're probably going to end up with the Netflix series. But again, it's kind of nice they got them in there. I like their performance. It's kind of like they're fun. Does it? Are they really? Do they stick out that much? Well, I mean, maybe not, but it's kind of fun that they got them in there. So again, not what I picture, but at least kind of fun. So let's talk about the big change from the bad beginning. Of course, we meet kind of off the Baudelaires. They're in a very bad living situation. We set up the tone and everything with the beach in the earlier sequence. Just really, we're hitting our beats very solidly, and we're setting up the tone very well in Act 1. But then we have we traditionally how things go. We have the marvelous marriage, which kind of like defeats Olaf in Book 1. But of course, if we do that, then we're going to lose momentum for the grand whole of the movie. So we go to kind of something inspired from the latter books. We go to a location from the latter books. We have an original situation with the Last Chance General Store. So let's talk about this sequence, man. How do you feel about the train sequence?
I like it quite a lot, actually. I think it's now, do I think that the wedding should have been the finale? Honestly, no, not really. I don't know what you would have done with the finale, but I think the wedding is a little awkward considering, the whole it's a grown-ass man marrying a 14-year-old girl. It's a little uncomfortable, but I do like this train sequence. I like how it's kind of like a classic serial situation, oh no, we're on the train tracks and the train's coming for us. That's that's very much a classic, like, silent movie type scenario that we see play out in an epic fashion here.
It's a really clever sequence. It is. It's this great sequence that puts the Baudelaires in. Basically puts them all to the test, and we get to see all their abilities kind of showcased here. Where they're stuck in a car. Klaus, we use his ability via that book effect, where we kind of dives into his memories of the bookshelf here, and we kind of have we have him kind of figuring out how they can get out of there. Violet, one of my favorite things about Violet's character, she's an inventor, love it. We foreshadow. I'm sorry. Basically, she fashions a lasso to kind of get themselves out of there, and of course, we bite the head off the little self. It's a really great little sequence. As you mentioned, it is very serious. Now you bring it up, yeah, it is really. Oh no, the Baudelaires, the train's coming for them. It's really it is really neat. Basically, it's more. Let me put it this way: it's more cinematic. It's definitely a cinematic way in which we. Okay, let me put it this way: if they had the wedding at this section of the story, you know what it would have been? It would have been. It's more cinematic than a handwriting debate. Like, well, she signed with her left hand. Does it count?
Right.
It's like So again, here's what we swapped out. We swapped out that and like, okay, we're going to Justice Strauss's library, and the class is reading up on the law. Therefore, we have like the left hand debate, which yes, it's clever. I'm not taking points away from that sequence, but again, in a movie where you have to kind of end off Act 1 and kind of transition things, we have to get him away from Olaf. I don't know.
I would honestly say that the wedding would be better served here, and this might be better served as the finale. Dare I say?
Tiki, that's interesting. But what I like I like switching the Marvel. I like where the Marvel's marriage.
Like, could you imagine if the movie ended with Olaf's Captain Sharp getting custody of the Baudelaires, but he's kind of trying to take the short way out by just killing them, and that's the end of the movie is them escaping this situation.
That's not a bad idea. Now you bring that up, but let me put it this way: I kind of like where the Marvel's marriage lands because it's kind of a more direct conflict, where again it's Olaf versus the kids, and of course Sonny in a very precarious situation. Which again is like kind of gives you the sell the first time you read that book, where a bad beginning. Like, oh my god, how the heck are they going to get out of this situation? And of course, like I got to know what happens next. I got to read the next book. So again, I think it was a solid movie, and more on that later. So point being, bad beginning ends with, okay, so Olaf is taken away because he's put him in peril just by letting Sonny drive the car, apparently. Mr. Poe in this scene.
Nothing about locking them in the car with the train tracks, just, no, the baby was behind the wheel, so you gotta go.
And this is the thing with Timothy Spall, by the way. Timothy Spall is just, he's so charismatic and respectable, than anything else. Where again, he's dumb as a post, sure, but he's a really nice guy.
And they do that same gag with the big primary focus in the books quite a lot. I remember one of them is in the Vile Village, where I believe that's book 7.
I think that's right.
Where Olaf frames the Baudelaires for, I believe, burning down something or something like that.
Well, here's the thing.
No. Like it's complicated. It's complicated. I know. There's like a fake Count Olaf involved in that story.
Yeah, that's what's involved in that one. I mean, the whole framing him for burning something down, I think, is like the book 11. So I don't give.
But I'm sorry, but what I'm trying to get at though is like when they frame the Baudelaires for killing the fake Count Olaf, Sonny is the main suspect, and then Violet and Klaus are the accomplices. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying.
I hear you. Yeah.
I'm butchering that. Anyways, go ahead.
Anyway, so Mr. Poe, basically, we have the whole, I can't hear you, I'm in the train, driving by the train.
I'm driving right by a train.
I really like the kind of the steampunk. Well, I can't say steampunk, but I like the blend, like kind of the timeless vibe here. I have like car phones, but again, we have kind of like tape recorders for the radio, like a reel-to-reel tape for a radio. It's really neat. Anywho, so yeah, let's get to my favorite section of the whole movie. Let's talk about honestly one of my favorite books in the series too. I always love this section of the story in the series. Unfortunately, I love the reptile room.
Yeah, Reptile Room is, I think that is probably the fan favorite book in the whole series. I think the reason for it is pretty simple. It's just a cool concept for a setting. You know what I mean?
And it's a compelling story. It's a murder.
It is.
It's really good. It's
I will say this out front. Like, I know we're trying to stay away from comparisons, but this Stefano is so much better than the Netflix Stefano.
You stole the words out of my mouth, little mister, but yes.
So much better.
It is. Okay, so two things. Let's break it down a little bit here. So one, we should probably talk about Montgomery first, though.
Mm-hmm.
So Montgomery, played by the wonderful Billy Connolly, of course.
Oh my God, Billy Connolly, a legend.
Yep. Very absolute solid casting on Montgomery. Just so again, for a change, we go from Olaf. Like the thing about this, we go to the polar opposite of Olaf as our next relative for the Baudelaire. Someone who's, he's not this. Basically, he's on the surface. He's something. He takes something scary and made it likable with snakes. It's kind of the fascinating thing about Uncle Monty, where we have someone like, okay, on the surface, oh my God, he's a relative who lives with snakes. How much creepier can you get? But it's like the incredibly deadly viper, who's like the most harmless, playful snake you've ever darn met. Of course, I love that jump scare bit too, like the typewriter. We play it narratively. We don't do as much like we do with Warburton, but it's a lot of fun here. But he's basically, as the incredibly deadly viper is revealed and like jumps out of Sonny, like we just kind of the typewriter kind of goes off of the ink cartridge, like spills or something, like shut jammed. But I mean, yeah, it's just kind of a really clever idea, especially put into kind of a 3-act context of this movie. Okay, we go from Olaf to an actual caring relative, and then we go to kind of a more eccentric relative after that. So again, like, we'd be comfortable if, like, man, the movie should end at Act 2 because things are just going all nicely right now. Montgomery.
Totally.
And we pull the rug out from under you. And again, Tiki, that commentary track goes a lot like that with Lemony Snickett. It's like basically after every act, he just wants the movie to end as that goes forward. And it's like Brad Swords like, oh yeah, we wanted to make a short film, so we thought we'd end the movie here, and they realize this kind of like shows up there. Oh wait, we had extra film. It's just so funny. Sorry. Anyways, without deferring to the commentary, back to Stefano.
Yeah, I do think that this is probably the shortest out of the 3 acts, just in terms of runtime.
You're absolutely right. I mean, again, it's definitely the briefest.
They really breeze through it.
We do, but again, I think I'm satisfied with it, man. They hit all the important bits. There's only one bit they left out that I really liked from the book the Netflix series does, but it doesn't kill it. It's just, I like the whole I like the gadget, like basically Violet reassembling the murder weapon. I really love that. The dual injector basically frame a snake bite.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing it's lacking from it. Everything else is really cool, though. But again, there's tension added to it here. So basically, I'm sorry, let me backtrack to Stefano before we get into the whole, like, kind of the big kind of climax of Act 2, I guess. Stefano, as you mentioned, way better than the Netflix version. Better design, too. I love because, he doesn't have like the big goofy beard and everything. It's not...
I mean, the Netflix one is just straight up almost like culturally offensive, and I don't use that term very often, but I think it applies to the Netflix one.
And this one kind of flies in the face of the cultural insensitivity here. Basically, it's like saying, okay, we're so obviously insensitive here. Basically,
exactly.
He's not. Basically, it's not Neil Patrick Harris doing kind of a bizarre Italian kind of parody. It's more of Jim Carrey in this case, just as like someone who's such a bad Olaf's such a bad actor, he has to declare what his nationality is to sell the character. I am Stefano. I am an Italian man. Like the first line he has is like saying, "I'm an Italian man, therefore I'm not Count Olaf." It's so funny. Right. But seriously, this is what I'm talking about. This is where I really highlight Jim Carrey and what he does with Olaf here. Where again, we have fun with Olaf. Again, we have the terrifying moment, like we have the scary moment for like the slap and everything. But more accurately here, Stefano is they call him out like, "You're Olaf. That we're not going to let you in." And he like pulls out a big knife and like stabs it in the door. It's like, yes, okay. We have the terrifying stuff with Stefano here. Where again, like we have a scene where he's in a hallway brandishing a knife. And do you have a hall pass? Just like it's that. That's what I'm talking about. We hit. That's the imagery from the book. Where again, we turn it up when we need to. That's where we balance things out really well.
Yeah, I like how he's like in character, but like very specifically intimidating at the same time.
Remember, he kills Monty in this as Stefano, which again it's so effective. This to me, all the best shots in the movie are in Act 2 here. Like we have we have the hallway shot, we have the shot where basically Montgomery meets a grisly end here, where he basically shows up behind him and as the thunder is like illuminating Stefano creeping slowly behind him. It's so tragic, the death of Montgomery. It's like Act 2 is the most emotional
I
act of the whole
definitely
movie.
have vivid memories of reading the book and being just crestfallen at Montgomery dying.
That's what I'm saying, and they so well represented it here. And of course, like the blue hand, we see him. Basically, it's kind of a blue lit room, and it kind of makes him look as the coldness of death. Man, it's so well shot. Anyway,
Right.
so basically, we abridged the whole like investigation where the idea is that Olaf's guys are pretending to be cops, and they said they're like, "Oh
Uh,
no, it's impossible." And of course, you have Mr. Poe, and you have basically, I imagine a takeoff of the Cedric the Entertainer character we have here, an investigator of some variety. Yes, kids, Cedric the Entertainer is in this. Used to be a thing. So let's see. Basically, it's kind of thematically. There's one thing thematically I want to talk about here. We have thematically kind of the lesson of hope in darkness, kind of personified here with the incredibly deadly Viper. Things are at their most hopeless here, and Sonny playing with this very deadly looking snake is their undoing. Again, like we're it's kind of in tribute to Monty. Like them, the kids being clever saves the day, and it's kind of a tribute to Monty. It's really nice.
sure.
All right, so then, again, Act 2 goes by like that, but it's really cool, really effective. So moving on from that, then we get to the wide window.
Yeah, Wide Window has always been one of my favorite books because I love the seaside setting and I love the imagery of the house on the side of the cliff with all the stilts and everything. I love the imagery of the wide window itself. I think that I'm sorry, I said Captain Sharp before, but that's not it, right? It's Captain Sham.
Yes, get it.
Captain Sham is honestly probably one of my favorite Olaf alter egos. So honestly, I think Wide Window is maybe one of the more underrated chapters of this series.
It is, but I got to tell you, and this is something the Netflix show adapted too well. Too well in the sense of, yeah, it's in the book, and they didn't do it, they're not doing anything wrong there, but again, compared to, we do things a little bit more bridge and cinematic here. I'm not saying it's better, but the
Well,
book,
like I
they have
said,
the whole.
I think sometimes with the Netflix show, it does go down to like kind of like a Snyder logic of like they're adapting things in the book really closely, but it's like in a point like what the hell is even the point of adapting it so closely that you're not going to change anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is like I don't mind that they omitted like the peppermint scene. I don't mind that we omitted that because again,
Right.
it's a much more kind of like basically. I think our pace. Here's the thing. Some would argue we're cutting a lot of things. I would argue I think we're really well paced in this movie. I
I
make the
agree,
argument.
and I think that it does work better than the series does in some respects because, like I said, my big problem with the series is that it is repetitive and it does drag out. You know.
Now, the only trade-off in making it so well paced is, again, I think the credence that makes an argument is that, well, you want to kind of care about the relatives and kind of buy that they might end up with the relatives. I think we did a great job with Monty, and then, of course, we then basically going from Reptile Room to Wide One is where you have to attack
But
your
like you
premise
already
there.
established, like it's not like every relative is going to be a Montgomery. Like
Very true.
most of them aren't, you know. And what I like about Aunt Josephine is that she's definitely eccentric and kooky, and maybe even what?
What?
Oh,
No.
sorry. She maybe even like a little bit like dangerous to the ball players because of how OCD she is. But she means well, you know what I mean? It's like she doesn't have the Baudelaires like she doesn't have their number. You know what I mean? She's not a great guardian, but she's not malicious at least.
Think about this, Tiki. You know what's really great about the three act structure of this movie, or at least the three book structure, if you will? So each act kind of again we put the Baudelaires on an adventure here, and we kind of we kind of reflect their worldview and kind of like what we're saying with this universe here. Where we have the reptile room, we're like find comfort in a bad situation. It's kind of what we had the earlier scene in Olaf's attic where they make the little shadow of their parents using the little silhouettes of their parents from the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Again, trying to find comfort within a terrible situation. We find comfort with Montgomery Gunn. We're kind of finding amusement and comfort within scary imagery with the reptile room. And Wide Window is Aunt Josephine is kind of like, no, you should be terrified of the terrible predicament you find yourselves in. You should be careful. And again, we took her from this. She used to be this very adventurous kind of like this woman who's been a woman who's traveled the world with her husband after the death of her husband. She's again presumably by Olaf and so on and so forth. But again, that's something they don't really have time to tackle in the movie. She's lost kind of her nerve, and she's terrified by the world now. She's lost everything. So again, it's kind of a cautionary tale, like don't be afraid of when life throws something really unfortunate in your path. So again, it's really kind of they're learning something with each relative. Is kind of what I'm getting at here.
Sure,
it's kind of nice. So, of course, Meryl Streep. I look, nothing against Alfred Woodard. I also like Meryl Streep better. I'm sorry, I do. I don't know why. She's just really fun here. I don't know. She sells fear.
I think she fits the character a little better.
That's the thing. Like, she's what I picture.
And again, folks, it's not just because of the race thing. All right, shut the fuck up.
That's the thing. I got to give her this.
I hate to keep bringing that up, folks, but that's the culture we're living in now.
In Alfred Woodard's defense, though, I think she has a better ending than the Aunt Josephine in this movie does. Like, she goes down swinging versus this one where she kind of goes down a little pathetically.
Right.
Remember, here's the thing I forgot about until I rewatched Tiki. You know what? She's like, take the baby, take the children. It's like, come on, Aunt Josephine.
Yeah, that was not flattering at all.
That's the thing. Honestly, I remember loving her something like that's exactly
right. Of it, I just laid out like that whole she's not malicious at all. But no, you're right. That is not a great look at her. For her at all.
Like, that's the one moment, because again, like, you're right, she's so like she's what I imagined when I was reading the book, and again, like, the Colleen Atwood design looks really good on her, and like the clothing looks just like you'd imagine reading the book, and then it's like, well, then she's like, take the children.
I could not see the book version of this character doing this.
That's the thing. That's the one thing. Again, Woodard has that over. She kind of braved up, but she kind of returned to her roots at the end of the day. Like, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she sticks up, stands up. Okay. One thing with Captain Sham. So Captain Sham won most transparent thing ever with the name Sham.
Yes, but I love it, and this is kind of what I'm talking about, where like Jim Carrey's comedy comes mostly from these disguises, but I think that it really works. I really do.
It does, and I like that. We kind of have like a Doc Ock Aunt May situation with Captain Sham. And again, while it is abridged, I mean, again, this is what I'm talking about. Again, we sacrifice a few bits here, where again we have the whole Aunt Josephine kind of falling for Captain Sham a little bit there, sure. But because it's kind of hard to believe that after a day she'd signed over the children to Captain Sham. But then again, this is the same woman who again like take the children. So I couldn't tell you, but. But also, one of my favorite bits in the movie has over the series for me is I love that Klaus just like tackles Captain Sham knowing it's Olaf. He's like, not again. Just like
right, not this shit again.
I love that so much, and it's like that's the Scooby-Doo effect. Me like it's like when we do something like Batman meets Scooby-Doo. Like, okay, Batman can actually fight the bad guys they're going up against for a change. It's like we can attack the threat for a change. Anywho, so the main thing in the adaptation, I really do, again, the cinematic quality, I think why one of benefits from most is I love doing all of this at once, where again, we sacrifice all, is it make a lot of sense that Aunt Josephine just like, basically things happen a little quickly where she basically jumped out a window and she left a suicide note, but I love the tension in that sequence over there. The hurricane is hitting, there's not a lot of time, they have to figure out the riddle of the wide window and everything, and we set up the wide window as kind of a foreshadow for the big reveal in the next part of our story, which is really cool, by the way. But importantly, they're deciphering the thing in the midst of a hurricane, like very, very quickly, and then they find her. I just like the tension in which they kind of get themselves out of the predicament and everything. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So then, and again, this is where we kind of benefit from changing a few things here. So here, basically, the transition from this to the Marvelous Marriage is what I want to talk about. So,
okay.
So I like that we don't do Captain Sham again. So we have the whole thing where now they're in the possession of Captain Sham. But what we do instead is, so Olaf bails them out of the situation because they have nowhere else to go and they're about to be eaten by leeches. Oh, the leeches, man! The leeches are still memorable and cool. So basically, Josephine meets an abysmal end here as she just kind of falls. She's basically because she ate a banana, all because of a banana. Because she ate when you're not supposed to eat. Like it's so funny. It's like a PSA. Like don't go swimming until half an hour afterwards. Now we know why, because leeches will get you. That's what Daniel has trying to tell everyone.
Uh-huh.
No, but in all seriousness, I like that Olaf kind of is re-entered into our story. But the problem is, it's a buy. I can excuse a lot of things in terms of like our runtime and our abridgment of things here, because I like the flow of everything. But on a rewatch, in hindsight, the kid's falling back into Olaf's custody just because he was there at just the right time. I know it's Mr. Poe, but it's still a stretch for me. It's a buy. That, don't you see? He really cared about him the whole time. Give him back to that guy that you took him away from.
Yeah, it's not great, but
like, I'll give the movie a lot of credit, but that's a hard.
We just kind of need it with with how we transition into the last act. Like you said, we need something like that. It's clunky, but it works on a screenwriting level just to get from point A to point B well enough.
So I like where we go. Just getting there is a little bumpy. So again, not the end of the world, but it's just on hindsight and the benefit of hindsight. Could we have massaged that out a little bit? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And why is Mr. Poe suddenly showing up there instead of like, why he just showed up like a few seconds after Olaf? If he showed up in the first place, that's what I'm saying. It's really convenient the way that scene plays in hindsight.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so moving on to the marvelous marriage of it all.
I love how you coined this, by the way, because this totally sounds like a book, The Marvelous Marriage.
So we kind of talked a little bit about the marvelous marriage, but I guess the remaining half of it that we should talk about is I like how we added heft to the climax that the bad beginning had, as I already kind of already went through. Like, we're on Olaf's turf, as another way of putting it. I like that we're on Olaf's turf now. We're on the stage. We're during a play. We're on Olaf's turf. We set up the actor thing. We're finally seeing it in practice in front of everyone. It's kind of like the Baudelaire's cosmically in the universe of Series and Forge events. They could tell as many people as they want that they're in peril. No one will hear them because Olaf will get in the way. And we kind of put that on center stage in the literal sense. Sonny's in peril. We have Poe and Justice Strauss involved. It's very full circle and really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we exiled the handwriting thing, but we had a little clever reference to it. Right hand, please. It's like it's neat. We addressed the loophole. And we kind of, we're hitting our beats. And I don't mean to keep deferring to you, but it's a perfect analogy you had there. It is very Snyder-esque, good Snyder. It's very kind of Snyder Watchmen-esque. So how do you feel about the magnifying lens thing? So I really like this. What do you think?
Yeah. Personally, I think it's a little overcomplicated myself. I don't know.
Well, here's what I like. I like that it's again, and basically, if you're gonna basically tell that, again, it was kind of a risk, but again, a smart risk because they knew at the end of the day they weren't doing sequels. They hoped they were going to do sequels, but they didn't know, so they kind of like compromised. Like, again, maybe from what I recall, I know in the Netflix show that doesn't do this. I can't speak 100% of the books. I know we don't. I know that the magnifying lens thing is just something they created for the movie.
I'm just saying it's a lot of information thrown at you all at once. You know what I mean?
True, but it is done visually, though. I think that kind of makes it a little bit more palatable. Where, again, we see, okay, so we're told not to go up in the tower like in Act 1, so he just goes up there to save Sonny, but while he's there, he puts together the clues from the other two acts, the spyglass of the whole volunteer firefighters, and the wide window and the way that eye contraption works. The idea that Olaf, to me, it says it's Olaf, but again, it's a little vague. Other bad guys. Points like this is the way they would light fires and kind of burn the mansions down, basically take out enemies. Importantly, it kind of links Olaf into killing the Baudelaire parents, and he's the author of all their pain, which I thought was really cool. And he uses that to kind of undo the marriage license there by setting it ablaze. So it's literally a sliver of hope in the form of light saves the day. That's pretty cool.
Right.
And,
yeah, actually, now that you mention it that way, now that you put it that way, it does kind of like have some thematic relevance that I didn't really consider with the light thing. So that's a good point.
I'll tell you my favorite thing in the adaptation that we could never get in the show or in the book series, because again, if you know you're going to do more, you can't quite do this, and this is what we get from moving the marvelous marriage to the end here, is that Olaf, I love what Jim Carrey does here. Jim Carrey just kind of basically he just chastises the audience, saying, "You're all accomplices. You all participated in this. They tried to tell you, but you didn't listen to them because they're just children." He's even calling them out on their BS. Just basically calling the series out and like, "This is your fatal flaw." And look at all the hardship. You say you're looking out for their best. It's just kind of a really great dramatic moment. And basically, Olaf saying, "I've won." We allow Olaf to actually win for a moment there. And we don't undo it with semantics. We just have a moment where he won, and it's kind of a wake-up call for everyone. And then we have this wonderful bit after everything goes up in flames, and he's initially kind of like handcuffed. I love this misdirect. It's not as great as that misdirect in that one episode we talked about, but this is really good. This is solid. Where we have Jude Law saying, and then Count Olaf was subjected to all the horrible things he put the children
really
through
fun.
before his life sentence, and
This is
it's really.
This is probably the best broad comedy that we get from Jim Carrey.
Yeah, where he's basically trying to figure out, again, Olaf being incompetent compared to the children. He's trying to get out of the car. He's trying to figure out, like, oh my god, how do I escape these leeches, and how do I work with the platform and everything. And he's yeah, but I love the button on. The button on is just so well delivered. Where if only justice worked that way. Where basically Jude Law is giving you the harsh realities of the world of the Baudelaires here. Like, Olaf. I love that we don't see Olaf escaping. I love that we just see that like we hear that he escaped. It's kind of treating your audience with respect, saying, yeah, kids, it's not always going to be a happy ending. The Baudelaires are still going from home to home, but we gave him a little moment at the end here. I love that. How do you feel about the ending of this movie? Like revisiting the mansion?
Well, Dragon, it's one of those things like you were talking about where it's a benefit of the adaptation, right? Where this is definitely a scene that's not in the book, and it puts maybe a little bit too much finality on the story, but it's good in terms of being a standalone narrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one. It's kind of a great full circle thing where Klaus was giving up hope in Act One, and she mentioned this anecdote about the parents sent the letter, and of course when they showed up, said, "Oh yeah, the letter got lost in the mail, but we're here." Basically, they keep faith even in a hopeless situation, and we pay this off. We give the children a chance to hear from their parents one last time without doing something like they're alive the whole time,
Mm.
doing something like that, or like a pre-recorded message or something. So it's a letter, and just kind of like it's a feel good. Again, it's what it epitomizes what the series is about. Both the concept as a whole, where again it's light amidst a hopeless situation. It's kind of inspiring. It embodies that inspiring vibe of the whole premise, I guess.
Exactly. All
Very
right.
nice. All right.
Okay, so I guess final thoughts on my end, Dragon. I honestly enjoyed this more than I thought I would. I do think this holds up quite well, especially from a production design point of view. This is a damn good looking movie, especially when you compare it to most other live action Nickelodeon movies, which are very suburban in nature. And Jim Carrey's performance was a pleasant surprise how much I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of things in this movie that really do the Netflix show is definitely more faithful than this movie, but this movie might be the more entertaining adaptation out of the two of them, because I feel like this movie streamlines a lot of the issues that the books have, but it still keeps a lot of the same core qualities of the books, like the best parts of the books. And yeah, this is probably I would say this is easily the best of the four that we're going to be covering this month, right?
For my money, yes.
Unless I rewatch Nacho Libre and I'm like, oh, holy shit, this is like a subversive cinema. That's but that's not going to happen. So yeah, by all intents and purposes, probably the best installment of Nickelodemonth. All right.
For me, the film's a solid adaptation. Given the circumstances, again, it's an impossible question. Like, what's better, this movie that adapts 3 books, or this series that adapts like all the books? It's kind of like a TV series versus a movie. That's not a fair comparison. So I can't say one's definitively better than the other. Right? Basically, I would echo Tiki sentiment. So this is a very entertaining movie that's really well paced, and you have a lot. It has a lot going for it, and again, I feel, again, under the circumstances, it's very solid. And that says something after you have a whole adaptation in Netflix that literally has adapted everything, and this still holds up. And it kind of it's like it holds up to an extent. It's it has a few surprises. It's in some respects it surpasses the other, and it's a lot of fun in that regard. In some respects, it may be abridged, but it captures the style, the tone. It all really pops. Again, the Thomas Newman score, by the way, the score is really good in the movie. Just kind of get that in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, it's all in service. It's all in kind of great service to the books. And basically, it's in service to the books and kind of the sell for me of what the books were on the surface. Like I think this is a really great. A part of me feels this is a great foray into the books. It's like if you were like get a sell of what the books were, then you would get into other things like like this is the kind of thing you want to show someone who wants to get into the books. Say, well, if you like the movie, you might really like the books, or vice versa. I don't know. It kind of it's all the hallmarks that kind of interest me in the premise of this story. I think it was well represented in the movie, I guess. I mean, so this and Tintin probably the strongest adaptations that Nick has done. It's definitely, again, may not be what people, even the people working on it, expected for this movie expected of this movie, but at least for me, I would like to think for a lot of people, especially people who saw this when it came out, there's something unique about this movie, especially in the tomes of Nickelodeon. Something that just feels like almost not a Nickelodeon movie, but it just feels like they made a legit movie. They made a legit, like, it's not just like from the people who brought you all your beloved cartoon characters. We have this. It just feels like this is a Nickelodeon film versus a Nickelodeon movie. In the best sense of the word.
It's kind of like Rango in that way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so the point being, I always have a lot of nostalgic love for this bonus features alone, but of course, just with how it kind of it also kind of got me into the series and just kind of Lemony Snickett's work as a whole. So I got nothing but nice things to say about this one personally. So.
All right.
Okay, but speaking of our next podcast, Tiki, listen, you're listening.
Yeah.
Tiki, I need you to grab a Lucha Libre mask, a whole mess of tortilla chips, and kidnap Jack Black, because we're raising money for orphans. Come on, Barry.
Tortilla chips? Dragon, where am I going to get tortilla chips? It's not like they give them out for free at Mexican restaurants. Oh, God, Dragon. A mask? You want me to just literally rip a mask off of a Lucha Libre wrestler? And how the hell am I going to kidnap Jack Black, Dragon? The Muppets already did that. And for my knowledge, the Muppets never gave Jack Black back. How am I going to get Jack Black back from the Muppets, Dragon? Here it goes. On Nickelodemonth. I'm going to be the ultimate dad.
Soda.